The storm that had wrapped itself around Dragonstone all night was only just beginning to loosen its grip. Rain had softened to a mist that ghosted past the narrow windows, and thunder had sunk to a lazy rumble somewhere far out over the sea. In the vast, cold hall carved by dead dragon lords, Daenerys Targaryen stood barefoot on black stone veined with pale cracks, her hands resting lightly on the back of the jagged throne. She had always liked the sound of rain on Dragonstone. It reminded her that even this fortress of fire and shadow could be washed clean. The Raven handler knelt beneath her, cloak dripping, hair plastered to his forehead. He held the scroll up with both hands, as if it were an offering. The wax seal was smeared by damp, but the impression was still clear. A lion's head, mane stylized into flickering flames. Tyrion Lannister stared at the seal for a heartbeat too long, his mouth curving into something that was not quite a smile. "Of course," he said quietly. "Who else would be so eager to spoil a gray morning?" Daenerys extended her hand. Grey Worm moved, but she stilled him with a small gesture and took the scroll herself. The wax cracked under her thumb. The parchment felt heavier than it should have, as if the words inside had weight enough to tilt the world. "From King's Landing, Your Grace," the Raven handler murmured. "From Cersei Lannister," Tyrion corrected. "They call her queen because they fear her, not because they've forgotten the usurper is dead." Jon Snow stood a little behind and to Daenerys' right, the rein still clinging to the dark curls at his temples. He watched the scroll, not the seal, as she unfolded it and lifted it toward the light. He always watched the thing that mattered, not the symbol. The script within was neat and measured, giving nothing away, but the words were another matter. To Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of her name, the city remembers dragons. Daenerys felt the tightness in her chest before she felt the temptation. Once, that sentence alone would have filled her with fierce satisfaction. Now she read on with a wary steadiness. "I am told you come to claim what your father lost. I am told you bring fire and blood, unsullied and Dothraki screamers, to a city already broken by war and famine. I write to you instead with an offer. King's Landing has survived Aerys Targaryen, Robert Baratheon, Stannis Baratheon and their wars. It will not survive another. You may burn my city and roast my people with dragonfire. You may break the walls and call it justice, or you may rule them with me and spare them from yet another conqueror's vanity. Come to King's Landing under banners of truce. Bring your advisors, your hand, your northern ally. Let us speak as queens, not butchers. Two women have never sat a throne together in Westeros. It is time that changed. I will await you in the throne room of the Red Keep. Cersei of House Lannister, first of her name, Queen of the Undulls and the First Men, Protector of the Seven Kingdoms." When Daenerys lowered the parchment, the hall was very still. She could feel eyes on her, Tyrion's sharp and worried, Varys's heavy with thoughts, Missandei's unwavering, Grey Worm's alert, Jon's steady and searching her face. "Read it," Jon said. It was not a command. He rarely gave those unless lives were on the edge. It was a request weighted with duty. She read the letter aloud, letting Cersei's voice echo off the carved stone dragons. When she finished, the silence returned, deeper now, charged. "She would never share power without reason," Tyrion said at last. "Cersei clings to what she believes is hers like a drunk to a goblet. Either she is afraid, or she wishes to make us look like the mad ones if we refuse." "She is afraid," Varys murmured. "Of you, your grace, of your dragons, perhaps, for the first time, of something beyond her control." "Afraid," Tyrion echoed, turning the word over, "or clever enough to wear fear as a mask. She offers you what you have spoken of since you crossed the sea, a chance to change the world without burning it. Refuse her, and when the city burns, the story will say you chose it." "Yes," Daenerys said softly. "Mercy always makes a better story than fire." Jon stepped forward, cloak whispering over stone. "What do you think?" she asked him. He hesitated, as if he had already turned the question over in his mind 100 times. "I think the dead are still marching," he said. "Every man you lose fighting Cersei is one less to stand against the Night King. If she will talk instead of fight, you should hear her. But I don't trust her, and neither should you." Daenerys let her gaze drift past the kneeling raven handler to the narrow window slit and the colorless sky beyond. Cersei Lannister, offering to share the throne. It was wrong, like ice catching fire. "Have the council summoned," she said at last, folding the parchment. "We will speak of this in the map room." Her eyes found Jon's again. "And you, Jon Snow," she added. "I would have your council there as well." The carved hills and rivers of Westeros glowed under the low candles, the dragon table throwing long, jagged shadows across the war room. Light trembled over miniature mountains and river valleys, making them seem to breathe. Daenerys stood at the southern edge of the table where the carving of kings landing crouched like a spider at the mouth of the Blackwater. The little city was scarred and darkened from countless fingers pressing markers into its streets. A map that remembered its own invasions. "The offer sounds simple," Tyrion said, breaking the quiet. He stood near the reach, a cup of wine forgotten at his elbow. "Shared rule. 2 queens. A divided burden. It always sounds simple when it arrives in ink." "Nothing about King's Landing is simple," Ser Davos said. He traced a calloused finger along the coast, stopping where the Blackwater curled. "I've smuggled in and out of these waters enough to know that. Wildfire under the streets, sells words in the alleys, and a people that's been bled dry. A few pretty words won't change that." Varys inclined his head. "The captain of the City Watch says the gates are stronger than ever, but the people inside them are very near breaking. Another siege, another fire. They might welcome a conqueror who promises them anything different. And that is why she wrote this," Tyrion said. "She offers you the chance to spare them. If you refuse, their blood will be laid at your feet. She arranges the board so that either way, she sits at its center." Grey Worm's gaze stayed on the map, eyes fixed somewhere near the crownlands. "If she means to trap you," he said, "we will fight. Unsullied are not afraid of red walls or gold lions. We will kill them and take the city quickly." "We are trying not to kill them at all," Missandei reminded him gently. She looked to Daenerys, voice soft but clear. "You have always tried to spare the innocent when you could, my queen. Cersei Lannister knows this. She makes it a chain to pull." Jon Snow stood opposite Daenerys, near the carved neck and the jagged line that marked Moat Cailin. "I swore to fight for the living," he said. "That's all I've ever wanted. If meeting her gives us even a chance to avoid killing more of them, it's hard to say no. But I've seen what she's done. I watched the September burn from a hill outside the city when I came south the first time. Whatever you call her, she's not someone you share a hearth with." Tyrion's eyes flickered with memory at the mention of the September. "She killed half the court and shattered what remained of Tommen's mind," he said. "If she is afraid now, it is because she knows there are forces she can't control with Wildfire. That makes her dangerous. It also makes her predictable, at least to me." Daenerys listened, hearing each voice like a piece of a wheel turning. Duty, pragmatism, fear, hope in small, hard-edged fragments. "I did not cross the sea to be another tyrant," she said. "If there is a way to claim this city without burning it, I must try. But I will not walk blind into her den." "She asks you to come under banners of truce," Tyrion said. "We can make that mean something. You will not go alone. Drogon and Regal above, unsullied at the gates. A show of strength as much as good faith." Ser Davos scratched at his beard. "I've seen truce banners hide more than one ambush. But I've also seen what happens when good men refuse to talk and send their men to die in their stead. Stannis," he trailed off, swallowing the name. Daenerys raised her eyes toward the window. The sky beyond was a dull iron gray. The storm softened but not gone. "If I go," she said, "I go as a queen. Cersei Lannister will see that I am not the frightened girl driven from my home. I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen. I will not creep into her city like a supplicant." "You should not go at all," Tyrion murmured. Send me. Cersei has always enjoyed having someone to throw wine at. Daenerys's mouth twitched. It was almost a smile. No, she said. If this is the moment the realm changes, I will stand there myself. Her gaze slid to Jon. Will you come? She asked. He held her eyes across the carved land between them, across rivers and ridges etched in wood. I swore I'd follow you, he said. I meant it, but I'm the one the North looks to. If I ride into Cersei's hall and she decides to cut us down, they lose their king and their shield in the same stroke. You never wanted that crown, Tyrion reminded him. Wanting doesn't matter, Jon said. They chose me. They need me alive more than they need me at your side in that room. Varys shifted slightly, hands folded in his sleeves. The North will not like this, whatever you do, he said. They will distrust Cersei Lannister no matter how many ravens we send. But they will also mistrust a dragon queen who burns a city of strangers. One way or another, their trust in you will be tested, Jon Snow. Daenerys let out a slow breath. The map between them seemed suddenly more fragile than the parchment that had brought Cersei's offer. I will go, she said. With dragons overhead and enough unsullied at the harbor to remind Cersei that betrayal flies faster than ink. Jon Snow will remain in the North, to prepare for the war that truly matters. Jon's jaw worked, but he said nothing. It was an argument he wanted to have and knew he had already lost. Then I ride with you, Tyrion said. Someone must be there to point out to my charming sister how much she stands to lose if she indulges her worst instincts. Daenerys nodded once, decision settling like a weight that somehow made her stand straighter. Prepare the fleet, she said. We sail for King's Landing at first light. The sea hurled itself against the black cliffs below Dragonstone, foaming white whenever it managed to bite into the stone. The storm had broken at last, leaving the sky streaked in bruised purples and fading gold. Wind worried at Daenerys's cloak, cold fingers twisting the fabric as she leaned on the balcony and looked out toward the horizon. Far beneath, tiny lights moved along the shoreline as men inspected ropes, checked hulls, ferried provisions. The fleet was a restive thing even while anchored, creaking and shifting as if impatient to be away. Above, two darker shapes traced wide circles across the sky. Drogon and Regal wheeled against the dimming light, their cries carrying down like ragged trumpets. Every time they banked, light caught the curve of a wing or the ridge of a spine, painting them briefly in molten bronze before returning them to shadow. They'll be ready by morning, Jon Snow said, stepping out onto the balcony. His breath showed pale in the cooling air. Your men don't waste time. They've had enough practice leaving cities behind, Daenerys said. Astapor, Yunkai, Meereen. Every time I thought I had finished with one place, some new fire flared and pulled me back. Jon moved to stand beside her, gloved hands resting on the stone. In the North, he said, you learn early that winter comes when it chooses. You can't hurry it. You can't stop it. You can only be as ready as you can and hope it's enough. And if it isn't, then winter takes you, Jon said simply. I've seen too many dead in the snow to pretend otherwise. For a few breaths, there was only the sound of the waves and the slow wing beats above. Drogon's shadow rolled over them, engulfing the balcony for a heartbeat before sliding away. You think this is a mistake, Daenerys said. Jon did not pretend otherwise. I think you're walking into a den because you don't want to be the monster they fear, he said. And I think that's the sort of courage that gets you killed. But I also think you're right to try. If there's a chance to save lives without burning a city, we have to take it. He stared out at the darkening sea. I don't trust her, he added. I never will. If she finds a way to use you, she will. If she can put a chain around Dragonfire, she'll do it. And if I refuse? Daenerys asked, voice quiet. If I answer her offer with fire? Then you'll win the city, Jon said, and lose more than you know. She studied him in profile. The scar along his brow, the way his mouth held itself when he weighed hard choices. There was nothing easy in him. No softness. but there was a stubborn, bruised kind of honor she had come to trust. "When I was a girl," she said, "I used to dream of Westeros. I knew so little of it that I filled in the empty places with whatever I wanted. In my mind, it was full of people waiting for me, ready to cheer when I came home." She gave a small, wry breath of laughter. "I never imagined I might have to share it," she went on. "Least of all with a Lannister." Jon's mouth twitched. "Most people don't imagine sharing power," he said. "Then the world makes them." They fell silent again. The sky deepened from purple to blue-black. Ships bobbed like dark teeth in the water below. Somewhere behind them, in the castle's guts, men were packing maps and ledgers, sharpening blades, arguing over casks of wine. "If the worst happens," Daenerys said, "if I walk into that hall and do not walk out again, the North will still have you." "I'm more worried about the opposite," Jon said. "If you don't come back, the dragons won't either. The living need them more than they need me." She turned to him fully then, the wind catching loose strands of silver hair and tugging them free from her braids. "You trust me," she said. It was not entirely a question. "I do," Jon answered. The words came without hesitation. "You crossed the world to fight for people who don't even know your name yet. You could have stayed in Essos, ruled cities that already worship you. You didn't. That counts for something. And if I choose wrong?" He looked at her, eyes dark in the gathering night. "Then you chose," he said. "Not Cersei Lannister. Not me. You. That's what matters." For a moment, Daenerys let herself imagine a different life. No throne, no crown, no dead marching on the living. Just a man and a woman on a balcony, watching the sea and thinking of harvests instead of battles. It was a dangerous thought. She folded it away and locked it behind her ribs. "I will go to King's Landing," she said. "I will hear what Cersei Lannister offers. If she thinks to bind me, I will break whatever chains she holds out. If she tries to twist mercy into a weapon, I will take it from her hand." Jon nodded. "Then I'll be where I need to be," he said. "In the North, preparing for what comes after you leave that hall." On an impulse, she reached out and laid her hand briefly over his where it rested on the stone. His fingers were cold. Hers were colder. "Then we walk different roads," she said, "hoping they meet again." Above them, a dragon roared, and the sound rolled over the island like a promise. Dawn came grudgingly, pushing a pale strip of light along the horizon, as if someone had dragged a blade through the dark. The sea was a restless gray, the wind carrying the smells of salt and tar and damp wool. From the cliffs, Dragonstone's harbor looked like a nest of battered shadows. Ships rocked at their moorings, masts' black fingers scratching at the sky. Men moved along the piers and gangplanks, dark shapes against darker water. Daenerys felt the ship shift under her feet as it took the swell, the timbers groaning as if waking. She stood at the prow of her flagship, one hand curled around the carved dragon's head that jutted from the bow. Spray cooled her cheeks whenever a wave hit the hull just right. On the stone shore, the last ranks of Unsullied boarded in perfect order, shields and spears moving with mechanical precision. Dothraki led their horses along narrow planks, murmuring soft, rough words to keep the animals calm as they snorted at the unfamiliar roll of the sea. "Efficient," Tyrion said as he joined her at the rail. His eyes were narrowed against the wind. If Father had ever managed soldiers half so disciplined, perhaps he'd have conquered more than the small council. Daenerys watched a line of gray-helmeted heads disappear below deck on one of the nearer ships. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "King's Landing. I miss its wine," Tyrion replied. "I miss the rare days when its people laughed without cruelness. I don't miss its smells, or its politics." Missandei came to stand on Daenerys' other side, her cloak pulled tight, curls tugged by the breeze. "All ships are ready, Your Grace," she said. "Grey Worm reports no delays. We can leave as soon as you give the word." Daenerys nodded, searching the sky. Drogon appeared first, dropping like a burnt chunk of night from a higher cloud. He leveled out above the water with a furious beat of wings, skimming so low that spray exploded in shining curtains beneath him. Rhaegal swooped after his brother, green-tinged wings slicing the air. Their roars rolled over the fleet. Men paused, heads tilting back, eyes wide. Even those who had seen the dragons before could not help staring. Some made warding gestures. Others grinned like children. "Do you remember the last time you saw that city?" Daenerys asked Tyrion, eyes still on the sky. He took a drink from his cup, the wind snatching a few drops away. "I remember watching it recede as I sailed east in chains," he said. "I remember thinking I was leaving a graveyard that didn't know it was dead yet." "You chose to return with me," Daenerys said, "to help me rule it differently." "Hope is a stubborn thing," Tyrion replied. "It follows you even when you know better." Daenerys turned to look toward the south, toward a city she had never seen except in dreams and maps and other people's stories. She imagined its walls, its filth, its crowds, its towers. A place her ancestors had claimed with Dragonfire. A place they had lost with madness. "Do you believe she's truly afraid?" she asked Tyrion. "Your sister." A slow breath left him. "Yes," he said, "but Cersei has always worn fear like armor. It makes her more dangerous, not less. She will smile and speak of peace while counting every way she might kill you." The last lines were cast off. The gap between ship and shore widened with each heartbeat. The cries of dockworkers grew fainter. Daenerys watched Dragonstone recede, its black bulk already wrapped in mist. "Once," she said, "I thought this place was my answer, my father's seat, my family's legacy. Now it feels like a stepping stone." "That's all castles ever are," Tyrion said. "Stones other people bled to stack. What matters is what you build on top of them." Missandei touched Daenerys' arm. "We will come back," she said quietly, "when the war is done." "If there is anything to come back to," Daenerys replied. Drogon roared again, wheeling high. Rhaegal answered, the sound splitting the morning. "Let her see us coming," Daenerys murmured. "Let everyone see." The sails bellied out as the wind caught them. One by one, the ships turned their prows south. Dragonstone fell behind, swallowed by distance and low clouds, as the fleet cut toward a city that had learned to fear the very creatures now guarding its approach. King's Landing rose from the water like something bruised. Its walls, once pale, were smudged with old smoke and new grime. Its red roofs sprawled in a haphazard sprawl, clustered around the towers of the Red Keep and the charred stump where the Great September had once reached toward the sky. Cersei Lannister stood on a balcony high on the cliff, the wind tugging strands of gold hair loose from her crown. Her gloved hands rested lightly on the stone balustrade as she watched the dark line of ships creeping across the morning gray bay. "They fly her sigils," she said. "Dragons instead of stags." Jaime Lannister stood just behind her shoulder, cloak rippling, his golden hand catching the light. His eyes narrowed as he traced the lead ship's path. "Did you expect her to hide?" he asked. "No," Cersei said. "Daenerys Targaryen has crossed too far to creep in quietly. Dragons prefer to be seen." High above the city, two shapes wheeled. Drogon and Rhaegal cut slow, sinister circles over the rooftops. Their shadows passed over streets and squares, making people below look up from their morning chores with mouths open and hands frozen mid-motion. The sound that rose from the city was not quite a scream, not quite a cheer. It was a raw, uncertain murmur, like a beast shifting uneasily in its sleep. "Beautiful," Jaime said under his breath, the word torn out of him. Cersei's lips curved. "Beautiful things are the most dangerous," she said. "You, of all people, should have learned that by now." Qyburn hovered by the balcony doors, hands tucked into his sleeves, eyes bright with morbid fascination. "Magnificent, Your Grace," he said. "To see them alive rather than merely as skulls in the dark. An education. Though one should always remember that even the largest beast can be felled with the right weapon." "You've made sure such weapons are still in place?" Cersei asked, her gaze never leaving the fleet. "Yes," Qyburn said. The scorpions have been serviced and hidden as you ordered. On the walls, in the towers, aboard certain ships. And what remains of the wildfire is safely stored in the remaining caches. Not enough to burn a city, Jaime muttered. Enough to make a statement, Qyburn corrected mildly. Cersei ignored them both. She watched Drogon dip low over the city's outer districts. The shadow of his wings slid along crowded streets, across wash lines and stall roofs. Some people dropped to their knees. Others ran. A few simply stood and stared, lips moving in prayer or curses. They remember, she said. Even if the dragons are only stories to most of them, they remember what it means when fire comes from above. Jaime's jaw tightened. He remembered too many kinds of fire. When Father stood on these walls after the sack, Cersei went on. He told me this city was nothing but stone and flesh. Stone can be rebuilt. Flesh can be replaced. What matters is who holds the power to decide which burns and which endures. She let her eyes drift toward the harbor, where the first of Daenerys' ships were slipping into place. I have decided, she said. I will not let it burn again, not while I can still choose. If I have to share that choice with a dragon queen for a time, so be it. But if she thinks to take it from me, her voice flattened, the words turning to iron. Jaime watched her profile, trying to reconcile the girl who had once dreamed of golden-haired children and songs with the woman who had stood in green fire and crowned herself Queen of Ashes. She's coming under your invitation, he said. To talk. You wanted this. I wanted to live, Cersei replied. I wanted my city to live. If that requires sitting across a table from another queen, I will bear it. But I will not forget what she is, what I am. Below, bells began to ring, warning and welcome tangling in the sound. The fleet drew closer. The dragons banked, their circles tightening. Have the throne room ready, Cersei said, pushing away from the balustrade. Full court. They will all stand there and watch history change, whether they like it or not. She turned, her cloak swirling, eyes as cold and hard as the stones beneath her. Jaime followed, glancing back once at the city spread below, a living thing bracing itself as lion and dragon prepared to face each other inside its ribs. The throne room of the Red Keep smelled of iron, dust and incense. Light knifed down through high windows, catching motes that turned and tumbled in the air like ash that had forgotten how to fall. At the far end, the Iron Throne loomed, blades and barbs and shadow, a monument to every man who believed blood could be forged into a crown. Cersei Lannister sat upon it as if she were welded to the steel. Black cloth and gold lions armored her slender form. The crown on her brow seemed an extension of the sword points at her back. Around her, courtiers lined the hall, their silks muted by the vastness of the space, their whispers a faint hiss under the steady scrape of armored boots. Ser Gregor Clegane waited at the base of the steps, a slab of black steel and dead flesh. Jaime Lannister stood just above him, off to one side, hand on his sword hilt more out of habit than intent. The great doors groaned open. The murmur died. Daenerys Targaryen stepped into the hall with her chin lifted and her stride unbroken. She wore dark leather softened by fur at her shoulders, silver hair braided back from her face and bound with small rings of blackened steel. Her cloak trailed behind her like a spill of shadow. Tyrion Lannister walked at her side, a half-pace behind. Missandei's soft step matched his on the other flank. Grey Worm followed with two of his officers, their unsmiling faces and spears a quiet message. The little group looked almost lost in the cavernous hall, dwarfed by pillars and stairs and the jagged silhouette of the throne. Daenerys halted where the sunlight from the windows met the long shadow cast by the throne. The beams painted sharp lines across the floor, dividing light from dark, visitor from ruler. She stood directly on that line, neither one nor the other. Cersei of House Lannister, she said, voice carrying without effort. You sent a letter under a white banner. You asked me to come. I am here. Cersei regarded her over her clasped hands. Up close, Daenerys looked younger than Cersei had imagined, fine-boned, almost fragile. But there was nothing fragile in the way she held herself, or in the calm that sat behind her eyes. "Daenerys of House Targaryen," Cersei replied. Her tone was cool as poured wine. "Welcome to King's Landing. I trust you found the harbor adequate." "I've seen worse," Daenerys said. "And better." A faint ripple of amusement passed through a few courtiers, quickly smothered. "You arrive with dragons overhead and soldiers at my gates," Cersei went on. "For someone who claims to seek peace, you have a very noisy way of knocking." "I have learned," Daenerys said, "that peace bought with weakness is no peace at all. You asked me to come under truce banners. I came, but I did not come naked into the lion's den." Tyrion's gaze flicked to his sister and back, measuring the currents beneath their words. The mountain's helm tipped a fraction, as if he, too, listened for a cue. "I am told," Cersei said, "that you have freed slaves and crucified masters, that you've burned enemies and spared strangers, that you call yourself breaker of chains." "I did not give myself that name," Daenerys said. "The people I freed did. If you are hoping to shame me with it, you will be disappointed." "Shame?" Cersei's mouth curved. "No, I have no interest in shaming you. I am interested in surviving you." A few heartbeats passed. The only sound was the distant cry of a gull and the faint metallic creak as a guard shifted his weight. "You wrote," Daenerys prompted, "that you wanted to rule together. You wrote that the city would not survive another war. Speak plainly. What do you offer?" Cersei leaned back, the blades behind her framing her like a crown of thorns. "What I offer," she said, "is a city that does not burn. What I ask is that both of us be willing to do what is necessary to keep it standing. The rest we can discuss in detail." Daenerys held her gaze, feeling the weight of the room press down around them, the histories embedded in its stones, the ghosts gathered in the rafters. "Then let us begin," she said, "before the dead reach your walls and make the discussion meaningless." The air in the throne room thickened as if the stone itself were leaning in to listen. Courtiers stood as still as painted figures along the walls. Guards stared ahead, but their hands were white on spear shafts and sword hilts. "What do you offer?" Daenerys asked again, more pointedly. Cersei drummed one finger once on the arm of the throne, then stopped the movement, as if she had caught herself in an old habit. "King's Landing remains the heart of the realm," she said. "Its governance, its courts, its treasury, its city watch, these stay under my hand. I have kept this city alive through siege and treason and fire. I know its veins and infections." Her gaze slid to the map painted beneath the throne, then back. "You, Daenerys Targaryen, will command the armies of the living," Cersei continued. "You're unsullied, you're Dothraki. Whatever broken banners still answer the crown's call. You will be recognized as protector of the realm and co-ruler beyond these walls. Together, we turn our strength against the dead." She tilted her head. "In effect," she said, "I keep my city. You gain everything outside it in practice, if not in name. A fair division, for two women who might otherwise leave nothing for anyone." Tyrion let out a slow breath. "Generous," he said. "If one overlooks the fact that the armies you offer to place under my queen's command have already been chewed to bone by previous wars, while the city you insist on keeping is the last intact jewel on the board. I am offering something your forebears never did," Cersei said, eyes briefly flashing. "A chance to rule without burning everything first." "I will not be used as your shield," Daenerys replied. "You will not keep the city and blame me for every corpse that falls beyond its walls. Blame is a story people tell themselves to sleep at night," Cersei said. "If you refuse, they will say you chose to burn them. If you accept, they will say you chose to spare them. The truth won't matter. I am merely offering you the more comfortable tale." Daenerys felt the old heat rise in her. "I am not my father," she said. "I will not be led to slaughter and told it is mercy." Cersei's mouth twitched. "No," she said, "you are not your father. He liked fire too much to ever consider sharing his toys." She rose from the throne in a slow, deliberate movement, the hall holding its breath as she descended the steps. Steel whispered as the mountain shifted slightly to one side to let her pass. Cersei stopped a short distance from Daenerys, close enough that Daenerys could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the faint hollows beneath her cheekbones. Close enough to smell faint wine and incense on her. "We are both monsters, if you listen to the right stories," Cersei said. "In some mouths we are saviors, in others, butchers. The truth is somewhere in between. I do not expect trust, only calculation." "You speak as though justice is a luxury," Daenerys said. "It is," Cersei replied. "One I have rarely been allowed." Tyrion stepped forward, placing himself just slightly between them, a small man in a field of giants. "Intent still matters, Cersei," he said. "This woman crossed half the world to free people she'd never met. You blew up your own faith and most of your allies because they inconvenienced you. You can wrap yourself in necessity, but some things were simple cruelty." Cersei's eyes sharpened, but she did not look at him long. "You want me to hand this city to the last Targaryen alive," she said to Daenerys, "on the promise that she will not roast us all. I want her dragons and armies pointed north while I keep the walls from collapsing behind her. The only way any of us see the other side of this is if we both surrender something we don't wish to." "And if I refuse?" Daenerys asked again. "Then you take King's Landing with fire and blood," Cersei said, voice flattening. "You sit alone where I sit now, and when the dead come, they will find a queen on a throne of ashes. I have seen what that looks like. I have no desire to trade places." The room seemed to tilt between them, balanced on a knife. Two women who had been shaped by fathers and husbands and sons, by loss and power and the knowledge that the world would cheer as easily for their deaths as for their victories. "We are not so different," Cersei said quietly. "We are simply at different points on the same road." Daenerys thought of chains, of crosses, of cities that had cheered her and later cursed her name when the cost of freedom proved heavy. She thought of the North, of Jon's voice saying the dead didn't care where you knelt. "We can argue which of us is more monstrous after we've kept the dead from eating our people," Daenerys said at last. "For now, tell me if you will truly fight beside us, or only behind us." The great doors shuddered open again. Heads turned as one. The ripple of surprise moved through the hall like a gust through long grass. Jon Snow walked in with his cloak still carrying the dust of the road. His hair was damp with sweat, his jaw set in the familiar way of a man braced for an unpleasant duty. He looked very much out of place amid the marble columns and goldwork, a shadow dragged into a room of polish. "Apologies," he said, voice roughened by travel. "The King's Road is slower than raven wings." Daenerys felt a tightness she hadn't realized she was holding ease fractionally at the sight of him. She had not expected him to come. She had not asked him to. Cersei's gaze flicked over him, cataloging. Stark features, northern leathers, the stubborn tilt of his chin. "The king in the north," she observed. "How rustic." Jon did not flinch. "Queen Cersei," he said. "Queen Daenerys." He crossed the floor without hesitation and came to stand beside Daenerys, slightly ahead of Tyrion. Not behind her, not apart. Exactly where a man might stand who had chosen his place, not been granted it. "I wasn't told you were coming," Daenerys said under her breath. "Wasn't sure I'd get here before everything was decided without me," Jon replied softly. "Wanted someone in the room who's seen what's coming." Tyrion's eyeline dipped in something like relief. "At last," he murmured. "Another fool in love with the living." Cersei watched them with an expression that hovered between amusement and irritation. "I have heard many stories about you, Jon Snow," she said. "Bastard of Winterfell, Lord Commander, King. You do collect titles for a man who keeps insisting he doesn't want them." "I never wanted to be anything but a man who kept his word," Jon said. "The rest has a way of finding you when you're not looking." Cersei's lips curved. "On that point, at least we agree." Jon turned to face the hall, eyes sweeping over courtiers and guards, lingering briefly on the Iron Throne. "The first time I came south," he said, loud enough for the hall to hear. "I came to ask for help against the dead. I bent the knee to Daenerys Targaryen because she believed the living mattered more than thrones. If you mean to stand with us, say it clearly. If you only mean to buy time while others die for you, say that too. We don't have enough of it to waste." A low murmur passed among the spectators. No one here was used to hearing kings speak to queens that way. Cersei's eyes narrowed. "You speak as if ghost stories from the north are reason enough to hand over my armies," she said. "As if the word of a man who broke his vows to the Night's Watch should be all I need." "I broke my vows when I died," Jon said flatly. "The men I took them with are in the ground. Some of them got back up again with blue eyes." He took a step forward, toward the space beneath the Iron Throne's blades. "I fought them," he said. "On the wall, at Hardhome. I watched a friend die and rise with no soul left in him. I watched hundreds torn apart and stand up again. If you don't believe me, it won't hurt me. It will hurt every person who calls you queen when the dead pull them from their beds." Something in his voice made even the most jaded courtiers shift uneasily. "You ask me," Cersei replied after a moment, "to place Lannister men under Targaryen command and let dragons fly over my city, based on tales no one here has seen but you. It sounds like madness." "It sounded like madness when your father hoarded wildfire beneath this city," Tyrion said quietly. "We both know madness when we see it, Cersei. Sometimes madness is refusing to believe what stands in front of you because it doesn't fit the world in your head." "You presume much," Cersei snapped. "I always have," Tyrion said. "It is one of my few strengths." The mountain shifted his weight with a low creak of metal. Jaime's hand tightened on his sword, though he didn't draw. Jon looked back to Daenerys, to the dragons she carried not on her banners but in the set of her shoulders. "Whatever bargain you make," he said more softly, "remember that the dead won't care for the wording, only whether we stand together or scatter." Daenerys nodded once. The reminder was unnecessary, but it anchored her. The hall waited, breath held, as if the entire city hung on whatever would be said next in this room of steel and ghosts. For a long moment, nothing moved but the dust in the beams of light and the slow shift of men bearing too much armor on tired feet. Cersei Lannister sat very still. The weight of the throne pressed at her spine, but she did not lean on it. Her eyes moved from Daenerys to Jon to Tyrion, then to Jaime standing in the periphery, to Qyburn hovering like a careful vulture. "There are things you don't know," she said at last, voice softer but no less sharp, "about what it means to sit here. To look down at this city and understand that every empty bowl, every shiver in the dark, is your failure. You are not the first to bear it," Daenerys said, "and you will not be the last." "No," Cersei agreed, "but I may be the last who understands what is required to keep it from falling apart." She stood, slow enough that the movement itself made a sound. Cloth against steel, the faint scrape of the throne behind her. The watching faces tensed as she stepped down from the dais. Up close, she did not look like the queen of a story. She looked like a woman who had slept too little and drunk too much, whose beauty had been tempered on the anvil of grief and sharpened into something harder than prettiness. "You ask for my soldiers," she said, stopping a dozen paces from Daenerys and Jon. "For my ships, for my banners. You ask me to risk everything I've torn from the hands of men who told me I would never have it." She glanced past them as if seeing, for a heartbeat, the city beyond the walls of the hall, the crowded streets, the sagging roofs, the river lapping at the muddy banks. "Once, I asked my father what he would do if dragons came again," she said. "He told me he would fight till every sword broke, and then burn whatever was left. Better ashes than enemies in your hall," he said. That was what power meant to him. Her gaze snapped back to Daenerys. "I have already burned enough," Cersei said. "I have watched green fire swallow half this city. I have heard children scream and told myself it was necessary. I am tired of smoke." The confession hung in the air like something fragile. "So I will share," she went on, each word shaped like a blade. "For now, I will recognize you, Daenerys Targaryen, as co-ruler of this realm. protector of the living, commander of the armies we can scrape together. Your dragons may fly over King's Landing. Your unsullied may stand at its gates." A murmur skittered through the hall. No one had ever heard Cersei Lannister yield so much aloud. "King's Landing remains mine," she said, voice hardening. "Its courts, its coin, its watch. I will not hand this city to a woman who has never smelled it in summer. When the war is done, we will speak again of thrones. Until then, we fight together or you fight alone." "And if I refuse?" Daenerys asked one last time, needing to hear it. "Then you take what you want with Dragonfire," Cersei said. "And when the dead pour through the holes you've left, there will be no one to hold them. The people will know who chose that." She stepped closer, dropping her voice for Daenerys and Jon alone. "I will not promise I'll never betray you," she said. "I am not a child. The world doesn't allow such vows. But I can promise I won't burn this city again if I can help it. If sharing with you keeps it standing longer, I will endure it. For now." In her eyes, Daenerys saw no repentance, no softness. Only calculation, and beneath it, a bitter love for a city that had never truly loved her back. It was not the alliance Daenerys had imagined. It was flawed and crooked and full of knives. But it might keep more people alive than the alternative. She looked to Jon. "This might be the only way we win one war without losing the next," he murmured. "That has to matter." It did. It had to. Daenerys turned back to Cersei. "Very well," she said. "For the sake of the living, and for as long as the dead threaten this land, I will share this burden." Cersei's shoulders eased by a fraction, though her mouth did not soften. "Then we are agreed," she said. The hall exhaled with them. The sound that followed was not applause and not quite relief. It was something quieter, a collective loosening, the faint rasp of men and women remembering how to breathe after holding their lungs tight around fear. No one cheered. King's Landing had learned too often that cheering for one ruler could mean weeping for the next. But heads dipped. Some shoulders lost their rigid set. A few of the braver souls near the back let out slow, shaky breaths. Tyrion felt his spine a knot, vertebrae by vertebrae. "Well," he said under his breath, "we've managed to do what no maester ever thought possible. We made Cersei Lannister agree to share." Daenerys did not smile. Her eyes remained fixed on the woman walking back toward the throne. On the way, Cersei's hand brushed the hilts of the sword blades as if reminding herself they were there. Jon stood between them still, a line of fur and leather that connected dragon and lion without belonging to either. He seemed smaller in this hall than he did on a battlement, but no less solid. "This will not be easy," he said quietly. "The North will hate this. Some of your own people will hate it. They followed you here to see you take everything, not half. Perhaps they will live long enough to be disappointed," Daenerys said. "That will have to be enough." Cersei ascended the steps and reclaimed the Iron Throne, the blades folding around her like a nest of knives. With her seated, the room slipped back toward its old arrangement. Guards in place, courtiers bending their heads toward power. But something had changed. There were new lines drawn, new shadows cast. "Let it be known," Cersei said, her voice taking on the formal cadence of proclamation, "that from this day, the crowns of lion and dragon are bound in common cause against the enemies of the living. The banners of House Lannister and House Targaryen will fly side by side over King's Landing." She did not look pleased as she said it. She did not look broken either. She looked like a woman swallowing a bitter draught because the alternative was poison. "We'll need more than banners," Daenerys replied. "We'll need grain and steel and men willing to stand where the snow is deepest. And you shall have them," Cersei said. "Within reason. Qyburn will speak with your spider about levies and stores. Jaime will deal with your eunuch commander regarding movements on the roads. The Golden Company will remain here to keep order. My Dothraki will not be penned outside your walls like cattle," Daenerys said, jaw tightening. "They will be," Cersei countered. "If I say they will. This city will not survive riders who think every street is a battlefield." Daenerys was silent for a heartbeat. Then she inclined her head by the smallest fraction. "Then we will camp outside your walls," she said. "But they will answer to me, not you. Remember that when you look out from these windows and see their fires." "Our people," Jon said softly. The correction slipped out before he could check it. Daenerys glanced at him. The word lodged deep. Cersei heard it too. Something tightened around her eyes. "Do not assume the North will accept this as easily as you have," she said. "They do not love this city. They never have. If you are wrong about them, we will all pay the price." "If I am wrong about them," Jon said, "we were never going to win." Cersei leaned back, the throne's edges framing her like a jagged halo. "Then go," she said. "Plan your war. I will plan my survival. If we are fortunate, they will turn out to be the same thing." Daenerys turned her back on the throne without bowing. Tyrion fell into step beside her. Jon matched her stride on the other side. The three of them walked the length of the hall together, past rows of watching faces, beneath the angled light from the high windows. High above, dust motes spun in the sunbeams, indifferent to history. Outside, on the city's highest towers, workmen unfurled a second banner beside the lion. Black cloth snapped in the wind, the red three-headed dragon revealing itself to the streets below. People shaded their eyes and pointed. Some spat, some whispered prayers, some simply watched, too tired to muster anything more. At the main gate, where the world funneled in and out of the city, torches guttered in a wind that felt a fraction colder than the day before. Snowflakes and ash both drifted in the air, impossible to tell apart once they settled. The wheel had not shattered, but it had shifted. Lions and dragons, Northmen and Smallfolk, dead and living. All of them were caught in its spokes as it turned toward war. Daenerys stepped out into the courtyard light, the weight of what she had agreed to pressing against her ribs like a fresh bruise. Somewhere behind stone and steel, Cersei Lannister sat again amidst blades. Somewhere far to the north, a different kind of blade was marching south on dead legs. "Come," Daenerys said to Jon and Tyrion, to Missandei and Grey Worm waiting near the doors. "We have much to do before the snow reaches these walls." The city breathed around them, uneasy and alive, as lion and dragon began the impossible work of standing side by side. The Red Keep's council chamber had never felt so crowded. Not in bodies. There were fewer men here than in the days when Robert Baratheon had held court, drunk and red-faced, surrounded by sycophants and flatterers, but in gravity. Every chair seemed to hold a different version of Westeros, a different hope or fear for what might come of this fragile, impossible alliance. Cersei Lannister sat at one end of the oval table, back straight, hands folded, the circlet of her crown catching the morning light. At the other end sat Daenerys Targaryen, her dark leathers almost swallowing the glow from the windows, her silver hair a sharp, bright contrast. Between them ran a river of parchment, maps, and ledgers, as if the very lifeblood of the realm had been spilled down the center of the table in ink and numbers instead of blood. "We will need grain," Daenerys said, tapping a finger on a crude representation of the north. "A great deal of it. The stores in Winterfell will not be enough to feed an army that size, not with winter deepening. If we mean to send men north, they cannot starve on the way. The granaries of the Reach have been bled dry by war," Varys noted, his voice soft. "What remains is already promised to the city's needs." Cersei did not look at him. Her gaze remained fixed on Daenerys, sharp as a drawn bow. "The city comes first," she said. "It is already restless, hungry. I will not send half our stores trudging through snow to feed northern soldiers who have never paid a copper of tax to this throne." Tyrion rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Those northern soldiers will be the ones standing between this city and an army of corpses," he said. "Dead men do not pay taxes, sister, nor do they buy bread." Bronn, lounging farther down the table with all the irreverence of a man who'd killed his way out of enough tight corners to feel at home in any room, snorted. "Always thought corpses were cheaper to feed," he muttered. "But I'll admit they don't drink, and that's half the problem solved right there." A few uneasy chuckles rippled and died. Jaime Lannister leaned forward, one hand on the table, the golden one glinting. "We still have stores in the Riverlands," he said. "Some lords kept their grain hidden when they heard of the fighting. Fear makes men hoard. We can take what is needed in the crown's name." Daenerys's eyes flicked to him. "Take," she said, "from people who have already watched their homes burned and their sons conscripted? You would call that justice. I would call it survival," Jaime replied. "If the North falls, the dead will not stop at the Trident. They will come here, and then all this—" He gestured around the chamber. "At the walls, the table, the city beyond, won't matter." Cersei's jaw tightened. "You are quick to suggest we strip the Riverlands," she said. "Perhaps because you know they will not be stripping Casterly Rock. The mines may be nearly empty, but the stores are not." Tyrion lifted his head. "I left Casterly Rock a husk," he said. "You know that. There is little there but memory and ghosts." "Then send them," Daenerys said. "Ghosts do not eat. The living do." For a moment, Cersei's eyes met Daenerys's across the table. In that shared look there was a recognition neither would voice aloud. Each had watched cities tremble under their decisions. Each had weighed lives against thrones. "We will send what we can spare," Cersei said finally. The words sounded as if they had been clawed out of her. "From the Riverlands, from the Crownlands. You may take those levies north under your command. King's Landing's granaries remain under my control. If the city starves while you chase ghosts in the snow, this bargain ends." Daenerys inclined her head, accepting the ugly condition because the alternative was worse. "Then we must plan routes," she said. "Timetables. Which houses will answer your call and which will need persuasion." Varys's fingers rested lightly on a folded parchment, as if they could feel the weight of thousands of small lives trapped between these lines. "I will send ravens to those lords I believe still possess some measure of sense," he said, "and to those whose fear might be turned toward cooperation, with the right encouragement." "By encouragement he means blackmail," Tyrion said, "though I suppose we should call it diplomacy now. Sounds better at court." "You call it what you like," Cersei said, "so long as they kneel when the time comes." The candle flames trembled as a draft slipped beneath the chamber door. Somewhere beyond the keep's stone walls, the city breathed and shifted, oblivious for now to the fact that its fate was being recalculated in ink and grudging concessions. For the first time, Daenerys understood that sharing rule did not begin or end in throne rooms. It began here, in rooms like this, with compromises that left a bitter film on the tongue and a thin line of hope across the map. King's Landing had learned long ago how to watch. It watched from broken windows and shaded doorways, from alehouse benches and market stalls. It watched from behind shutters that had seen kings crowned and executed, and from beneath awnings that had once sheltered men whispering treason over cups of cheap wine. Now it watched something new. The Unsullied marched in a line that was perfectly straight, bare heads lifted, spears upright, shields held at an exact angle. Their faces gave nothing away. They moved like a single being, a river of gray leather and bronze. Beside them walked the gold cloaks of the City Watch, boots beating a slightly rougher rhythm, armor etched with old dents and stains. Their eyes slid toward the eunuch soldiers more than once, curiosity and resentment wrestling in their expressions. Between the two columns rode a lean man on a brown horse. His cloak bore no sigil, only a simple clasp of black iron. The hilt of his sword was plain and well worn. His name was Ser Jeremy Waters, a bastard of some minor lord who had clawed his way up through the ranks of the gold cloaks with a mixture of competence and an unusual lack of cruelty. "Keep the pace," he called, voice measured rather than harsh. "You're not racing to a brothel. You're patrolling your city." "Our city," he almost said, but the word stuck. Who could claim this place now? The lion still flew from the Red Keep, its golden paws hooked into the stone. Only that morning, a new banner had been hoisted beside it. Black field, red three-headed dragon. Along the street, small folk pressed back against the walls to let the soldiers pass. A woman with flour on her hands clutched a boy by the shoulder as he leaned forward, eyes wide. "Ma'am," he whispered. "They don't blink. Don't stare," she hissed. But her own gaze was fixed upon the Unsullied all the same. "They cut their cocks off, they say, for their queen. Can't scream, can't feel. Gods keep us." An old man perched on a crate hawking onions spat thoughtfully to the side. "Better them than those bloody mountains men," he muttered. "At least these ones don't try to take your daughter along with your coin." A washerwoman laughed, a quick, sharp sound. "If they can't use half their body, I suppose that's a kindness," she said. "Still don't want them marching past my door with those spears." Spears is spears, whatever's behind him. Above, a shadow slid over the rooftops. Heads snapped upward as Drogon's dark shape passed, wings spread wide, tail slicing the air. He was high enough that his roar was muted to a distant thunder, but close enough that the air seemed to vibrate. Some people fell to their knees. Others crossed themselves or cursed or stared with a kind of hungry awe. A little girl clapped her hands, delighted, until her father yanked her back. "Don't bring its eye on you," he snapped. "You want to be burnt?" An old Septon standing at the corner watched the dragon vanish into cloud. His lips moved around a prayer that felt thin and worn in his mouth. "Seven save us," he murmured. "From lions and dragons and the fools who think they can ride them." Ser Jeremy kept his gaze forward, face impassive. He could feel the weight of eyes on his back, the weight of two queens above him, of orders given in rooms he would never enter. He was only a man with a sword, trying to keep his city from tearing itself apart. "Stop here," he said, lifting a hand. The column drew to a halt near a crossroads where three streets met. Pairs of four, 2 gold cloaks, 2 unsullied. "You'll walk the route together. If there's trouble, you answer it together. No fights between you, or I'll have the lot of you scrubbing the flea-bottom gutters barehanded." A gold cloak with a broken nose muttered under his breath, but made no open protest. The Unsullied did not react at all, merely adjusting their formation with mechanical precision. As the new patrols dispersed into the winding veins of the city, King's Landing watched them go. It did not cheer and it did not boo. It simply filed away the sight, adding it to its long memory. Lions and dragons, gold cloaks and eunuchs. For a city built upon the ruins of older cities, it was just one more layer in the endless sediment of power. The city smelled of too many people and not enough food. Daenerys had known hunger, not the gnawing emptiness that came with true starvation, perhaps, but the sharp, humiliating pangs of a girl who had to pretend she was not counting the coins left in her hand as she stood in a market across the sea. She had known what it was to be powerless, but she had never known the kind of hunger that seemed to live in the very air of King's Landing. The square she walked through had once been a place of bustle and noise. She could see it in the cracked stones, in the faded paint of old stalls, in the wide space worn smooth by countless feet. Now it felt half-abandoned. A few vendors had set up with what little they had. Baskets of wilted vegetables, fish so thin their bones seemed to show through their scales, a stack of small loaves already going stale. Women watched her from behind their stalls, eyes wary above cloths wrapped tight against the chill. Children peered from behind barrels and their mothers' skirts, sticky hands clutching at whatever treasure they had managed to keep. A ragged doll, a chipped wooden knight. Daenerys had insisted on walking without the full weight of her guard pressing in around her. Grey Worm had argued, quiet but relentless, until she relented enough to let a ring of Unsullied follow at a short distance. Their presence parted the crowd as effectively as Dragonfire, but she could at least see the faces that parted instead of only the backs of helmets. "This is unwise, Your Grace," Grey Worm murmured at her shoulder, scanning the rooftops, the alleys. "There are many closed doors, many windows. We do not know who hides behind them." "We never do," Daenerys said. "Not truly, but I will not ask these people to trust me if I rule from a tower and never walk their streets." Missandei glanced at her, pride and concern warring in her eyes. "Your presence will mean something," she said. In Meereen, when you walked among the freedmen, they saw that their queen was not afraid to breathe the same air they did. It changed the way they spoke your name. In Meereen, I had already broken their chains, Daenerys replied. Here, I am a stranger with dragons, sharing power with a queen who burned their September. They do not yet know which of us to fear more. As if summoned by her thought, a small voice piped up nearby. Are you the Dragon Queen? Daenerys turned. A little girl stood there, no more than 6 or 7, her face smudged with dirt, brown hair tangled. She wore a dress that might once have been blue. It was mostly patches now. Her hand was outstretched toward Daenerys's cloak, though she had stopped short of touching it. Lena, a woman hissed behind her, jerking her back. Don't you? Forgive her, milady. She doesn't know. It's all right, Daenerys said. She crouched to bring herself level with the child's eyes. The movement made Grey Worm tense, but he did not step in front of her. The little girl stared at Daenerys with unabashed curiosity. Yes, Daenerys said. I am Daenerys Targaryen. The girl's eyes went wider. Do you ride them yourself? She asked. The dragons? My brother says you can't, that a lady would be too scared of falling. A faint smile tugged at Daenerys's mouth. I do ride them, she said. And I have fallen once or twice, but I always climb back on. The girl grinned, a gap between her front teeth. I want to see one, she said. Up close. Her mother dragged her back again, fear in every line of her body. You don't, the woman said sharply. Mind yourself. Say sorry to the queen. The girl's smile faltered. She glanced at Daenerys, then looked down. Sorry, she murmured. Daenerys felt something twist inside her. Do not apologize for wanting to see the world, she said. If I can, I will make it so you can look at dragons without fear. The mother's eyes flashed. With respect, your grace, she said, the title sounding strange on her tongue. We've had enough of looking at things without our say. Kings, queens, lords, dragons. They all pass overhead, and we're the ones trampled when they land. Daenerys straightened slowly. What is your name? She asked. Mara, the woman replied, chin lifting in defiance. And this is Lena. Mara, Daenerys said. I cannot promise you that there will be no more trampling. The world we live in is cruel. But I can promise that I did not come here to burn your home for the sake of a chair. Whatever Cersei Lannister has done, whatever war brought us to this, I will try to see that your daughter grows up in a city that is more than a battlefield. Mara's eyes searched her face, as if trying to peel back layers of titles and myths to the girl who had once crossed a narrow sea with nothing. We'll see then, she said. Won't we? Her words were not disrespectful. They were simply honest. Daenerys nodded. Yes, she said. We will. As she moved on through the square, she felt those eyes on her back, weighing her against every ruler who had ever walked these streets. She wondered how many chances she would have to tip that scale before war and winter forced her hand. The solar smelled faintly of smoke and something sharper, a sweet, acrid tang that clung to the back of the throat. It was a scent Cersei had come to associate with both triumph and terror. On the table before her, maps lay unfurled, their edges curling as if trying to escape the weight of the vials set atop them. The glass containers were no larger than a man's thumb, filled with liquid that caught the candlelight and turned it a sickly green. Smaller charges, Qyburn explained, with the enthusiasm of a child presenting a new toy, more easily placed. We no longer have the supply to recreate another September of Baelor, alas, but we can still make a statement if needed. Jaime turned from the window, jaw clenched. A statement, he repeated. You mean burn more of the city? Only the parts that no longer serve, Qyburn said calmly. Rot spreads, Ser Jaime. Sometimes you must cut away the diseased flesh to save the limb. Cersei picked up one of the vials, holding it to the light. The wildfire within seemed to move of its own accord, shifting like a living thing. She remembered the roar, the heat, the way the world had turned green for a heartbeat as the September exploded. the shockwave rippling through the city like a god's laughter. She had felt powerful then, untouchable. She had felt utterly alone. "Put them away," she said abruptly, setting the vial down with more force than necessary. "I will not have them on the table when the Dragon Queen's people come to speak of supply routes and troop counts. I am not the Mad King, no matter what they whisper." Qyburn's brows rose, but he inclined his head and began carefully placing the vials into a padded chest. "It's not their whispers that concern me," Jaime said. "It's what you whisper to yourself when you can't sleep." Cersei's eyes flicked to him. A flash of anger quickly smoothed away. "You think I lie awake plotting where to burn next?" she asked. "I lie awake listening to the city creak and groan like an old ship in a storm, wondering which plank will give way first." She gestured toward the window. "Do you hear them, Jaime?" she said. "The small folk, the guards, the merchants, they talk of dragons and dead men. They talk of two queens sharing a city. They talk of whether the gold dragons in their purse will be worth anything when the snow reaches our steps. Fear makes them unpredictable. Wildfire makes everything more predictable?" Jaime asked. "I watched you burn the September, Cersei. I watched people we grew up with turn to ash. I'm not sure anything about that day felt predictable. It felt necessary," she said, voice cool. "And I would do it again. They would have put us in chains and called it justice." Jaime's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. "Do you hear yourself?" he asked. "You talk like father." Her jaw tightened. "Father would never have shared this throne with anyone," she said. "Not with a Targaryen. Not with anyone. I have already done more than he would have tolerated by letting that silver-haired girl into my hall." Jaime moved closer, shadows climbing his face. "And is that why you keep Qyburn's toys close?" he asked quietly. "So that if sharing becomes too much, you can end it the way Ares wanted to end it all?" Cersei's fingers curled around the edge of the table. "I keep options close," she said, "because I know what happens when you leave your fate in other people's hands. Robert taught me that. Joffrey, Tommen." She swallowed. The names tasted like broken glass. "If this dares to be good queen decides she's tired of compromise," Cersei went on. "If she decides that sharing the throne with a lion is more trouble than it's worth, I will not go meekly to the block. I will not let this city fall without a fight." "A fight against who?" Jaime asked. "Her? The dead? Both? Against anyone who comes for what is mine," Cersei said. The words rang in the small room. Qyburn closed the chest with a soft click. "Perhaps," he said. "If our agreement holds, we will never need these again. But it is always better to have a blade you do not use than to need one you do not possess." Cersei shot him a sidelong look. "And the scorpions?" she asked. "Being maintained," Qyburn replied. "Oiled, adjusted, tested, quietly." "Good," she said. "If the dragons ever turn their flames on us, I would like them to find the city less accommodating than the last time their kind flew here." Jaime stared at her, at the chest of Wildfire, at the careful lines of fortifications on the maps. "You can share a table with Daenerys Targaryen," he said. "But you're still planning for the day you have to kill her." Cersei met his gaze without flinching. "I am planning for the day she tries to kill me," she said. "There's a difference." Winterfell had weathered more than most castles. It had seen kings come and go, bastards rise and fall, southern banners fly and burn. The stones remembered. The people did too. Now their lady read a letter that made the hall feel colder than the wind outside. "Say it again," Lord Glover demanded, knuckles white around his cup. Slowly this time. Sansa Stark kept her voice even, though each word felt heavier than the last. "Queen Daenerys Targaryen and Queen Cersei Lannister have agreed to share rule of King's Landing," she said. "They will combine their strength against the Night King and the army of the dead. Troops from the Crownlands and Riverlands are to be sent north under Daenerys' command." Murmurs broke out among the gathered lords and ladies, like the low growl of wolves before a storm. "Share rule?" Lady Mormont scoffed from her place near the front. small body bristling with more indignation than men 3 times her size. You can't put 2 swords in one scabbard without cutting something. Are we supposed to trust Cersei Lannister suddenly cares about the North? She cares about the city, Sansa said. About her power. She may care about living long enough to hold onto it. That might be enough to keep her in this alliance, for now. Bran Stark sat beside her, fingers resting lightly on the arms of his chair. His eyes drifted now and then, as if watching things only he could see. They are all threads, he murmured. Some knot together, some tangle, some snap. Sansa shot him a quick glance, the familiar mix of frustration and fondness rising. Bran's words had become more like riddles as he sank deeper into whatever the three-eyed raven had made of him. Jon Snow agreed to this? Lord Serwyn asked, brows drawn low. He bends the knee to this dragon queen, and now she lies down with the lioness? Next you'll tell us he plans to invite the Freys to sup at our table. She didn't say Jon agreed. Arya Stark's voice came from the shadows. She stepped forward from where she'd been leaning against a pillar, hands tucked into her belt, sword at her hip. She looked smaller than some of the soldiers in the hall, but something about the way she moved made people unconsciously give her space. He's there, Sansa said. The Raven says he rode south to stand beside Daenerys Targaryen when she met Cersei Lannister. He was part of the agreement. Then he's a fool, Lord Glover snapped. We named him king in the north to lead us, not to sell our cause to southern queens. The last time the north tried to stand alone, the Boltons flayed us, Arya said quietly. I saw men hung in the courtyards of this castle for loving the wrong lord. The dead won't care if our banners say Stark or Targaryen. They'll only care that we're breathing. The girl is right, Lady Mormont said, folding her small arms. Our enemy is not a crown. It's the things crawling out of the snow. If Jon Snow made a bargain that gives us more swords, we'd be fools not to use them. That's easy for you to say from Bear Island, Lord Glover retorted. You didn't watch your men bleed for Robb Stark, then for Stannis Baratheon, then for Jon Snow. How many southern promises are we supposed to believe before we learn? Sansa's hand tightened around the parchment. We don't have to believe in their goodness, she said. Only in their fear. The hall quieted, listening. Cersei Lannister will never love the North, Sansa went on. She will never care for our people the way we do, but she cares for her own power, for her city, for her life. If the dead come for King's Landing, she will lose all 3. If fear of that makes her send men north, then we use that fear. And when the war is done? One of the younger lords asked. What then? 2 queens and a king all claiming the same realm? The North will be trampled between them again. Sansa looked up at the Stark banners hanging from the rafters, the direwolf's head stark against white. When the war is done, she said, we will still be here. Others may die in their beds in the south, choking on their own ambition. But the North endures. It always has. Our first task is to survive. The rest we can decide when we are not freezing and dying. Bran's gaze shifted toward her, something like approval flickering for a moment. The ravens bring more than letters, he said. The dead are moving faster than we thought. The last hearth has fallen. The umbers are gone. A ripple of shock went through the hall. How do you know that? Lord Serwyn demanded. Bran's eyes were very far away. I saw it, he said simply. Sansa swallowed. She had come to trust that tone. It had spoken of dragons over a frozen lake and a night king hurling ice like a spear. It had spoken of their father kneeling in the snow long after he lost his head. Then we don't have time to argue over whose crown shines brightest, she said. Send word to the bannermen. We prepare Winterfell for war. With or without southern help, the dead are coming. Arya's hand brushed the hilt of needle. Let them come, she murmured. We've been waiting. Snow fell in slow, fat flakes, drifting down to settle on stone and leather, on hair and fur, on steel. It muted the usual sounds of the castle. The creak of carts, the muttered curses of men carrying firewood, the distant bark of dogs. But it could not entirely swallow the sharp ring of swords in the training yard. Arya Stark moved like a shadow, feet light on the packed snow, blade flashing in quicksilver arcs. Brienne of Tarth met her strikes with measured force, her larger sword catching the slimmer one with a juddering clang that sent vibrations up both their arms. "Again," Arya said, breath puffing in white bursts. Brienne adjusted her stance, eyes narrowed with focus and something like annoyance. She had not expected to be pushed so hard by someone so small, but after their first bout months ago, she had learned to take Arya seriously. "You leave your side open when you turn that way," Brienne said. "A longer blade could slip beneath your guard." Arya grinned. "Only if I let it," she said. She feinted left, then darted right, body twisting in a way that would have put most knights flat on their backs. Brienne managed to pivot in time. Their steel scraping in a bright arc. Arya's blade kissed the rim of Brienne's pauldron and slid away. "Dead," Arya announced. Brienne snorted. "Barely. Dead is dead," Arya said. "Ask anyone in the crypts." A few northern soldiers had paused in their errands to watch. They leaned on spears and axes, faces flushed from the cold, eyes bright with a mixture of admiration and unease. There was something unsettling about seeing a girl dance around a knight with such casual precision. It did not fit with the stories they'd grown up on. Above, Sansa watched from the rampart, cloak pulled tight around her shoulders. The snow clung to her hair, turning threads of red into pale streaks. She had never felt entirely at home in the training yard. It was Jon and Robb's realm, Arya's playground. But now it was also a place where the future of their survival might be forged in small, bright clashes. "They're good together," Podrick Payne said quietly, standing a respectful distance behind her. "Lady Arya and Ser Brienne. They push each other." "Yes," Sansa said. "Arya's always liked someone to fight with." She leaned on the stone, watching as Arya ducked under another swing, snow spraying from her boots. For a moment, Sansa saw not the woman who had returned to Winterfell with a face full of shadows and a bag full of other people's faces, but the girl who had chased cats through corridors, hair flying, tunic torn. "So Jon Snow has made his choice?" Arya said later, when they sat on a bench under the gallery, cheeks flushed, swords resting across their knees. "Two queens, one throne. This should be interesting." Sansa let out a slow breath, the vapor curling around her face. "It was never going to be simple," she said. "Not with him. He always did like making things harder than they had to be," Arya said. "Climbing the wall, running off with wildlings, dying. Now this." Sansa's lips quirked despite herself. "He did it because he thought it was right," she said. "He always does." "That's his problem," Arya replied. "The world doesn't care what's right, only what's strong." She glanced at Brienne, who was wiping her blade down, movements precise. "But sometimes they're the same thing," Arya added. "Sometimes the right thing is the only thing strong enough to stand." Sansa looked at her sister. The girl who had once wanted nothing more than to escape needlework and courtly manners now spoke like someone who'd seen more corpses than weddings. Perhaps that was what the world had made of them. "Would you go south?" Sansa asked abruptly. "If Jon asked you to stand beside him in that den of lions and dragons?" Arya's eyes flicked up, sharp as a thrown knife. "I go where our family needs me," she said. "If that's south, I'll go south. If it's here with you, I'll stay. The dead will come either way. I'd rather meet them where I can see them coming." Sansa looked toward the distant line of the trees, where the world beyond Winterfell's walls waited. "They're coming," she said. "Bran sees it. The ravens bring it. Whether these queens keep their bargain or not, the dead will come. We have to be ready here." Arya nodded. "Then here is where I'll be," she said. "For now." Night softened the city's ugliness. From the balcony, King's Landing looked almost peaceful, a sprawl of rooftops and alleyways painted in shades of charcoal and ink. Here and there, pockets of firelight glowed like embers scattered across a hearth. Daenerys stood with her hands resting on the cold stone, feeling the roughness under her palms. The air was cooler now. The heat of the day bled away, leaving a faint tang of smoke and sea. Above, Drogon and Regal wheeled through the darkness. Their shapes were barely more than deeper shadows against the night, but Daenerys knew every curve of their wings, every rhythm of their flight. Their occasional low calls rolled over the city like distant thunder. She heard the soft scuff of boots behind her. "If you've come to push me off, Ser Jaime," she said without turning, "you picked a poor moment. My dragons are in a foul mood. They might take it personally." Jaime Lannister stopped a few paces away, cloak shifting around his shoulders. "If I meant to push you off, Your Grace," he said dryly, "I'd at least have the courtesy to do it where the fall would be shorter. No sense in making the dragons angry and the city a mess." Daenerys glanced back at him, a faint smile touching her lips. "You were called the Kingslayer," she said, "not the Queenslayer. I suppose I should take comfort in that." "Titles have a way of sticking," Jaime replied, "even when they stop being true, or when they were never entirely fair in the first place." He came to stand beside her, leaving a respectful distance. From here, he could see the curve of Blackwater Bay, faintly silver in the moonlight. "I remember when this balcony belonged to Robert," he said. "He'd stand here with a flagon of wine, piss over the edge, and complain about how much the city stank. I always thought it a pity he never realized he was the one fouling it." Daenerys looked out over the dark, tangled streets. "And now?" she asked. "Who do you think fouls it now?" Jaime let out a slow breath. "Everyone who thinks it belongs to them," he said. "My sister, your dragons. Men like me who killed for one king and then another, thinking it would matter." The honesty surprised her. She studied him openly. The lines around his eyes, the scar along his jaw, the way his golden hand caught the light and reflected it back harshly. "You killed my father," she said. She felt the old anger rise, thinner now but still there. "You drove a sword through his back while he sat the throne." Jaime's jaw tightened. "I did," he said. "You don't deny it," she observed. "There's little point," he replied. "Everyone else has had their say about it. Kingslayer, Oathbreaker, traitor, they all prefer that story. The version where I was too proud to watch my king fall and wanted the glory for myself." He turned his head, meeting her gaze. "Do you know what your father was planning?" Jaime asked quietly. "The Mad King? He had Wildfire hidden all over this city. Beneath the September, beneath Flea Bottom, beneath the Red Keep. He meant to burn it all. Men, women, children. Every soul in King's Landing. Let him be king over the ashes," he said. The words were not new to Daenerys. She had heard rumors, whispers, accusations. But hearing them from the man who'd held the sword made them feel heavier. "So you killed him to save the city," she said. "I killed him because he ordered me to bring him my own father's head," Jaime replied. "And because I realized that if I didn't, there would be nothing left to save. Perhaps there's no nobility in that. Perhaps I am only a man who chose one horror over another." He looked back out over the city. "When your dragons came," he said, "and my sister sat that throne with Wildfire still in her reach, I thought I was watching it all happen again. Another Targaryen, another Lannister, another city caught in the middle. And now?" Daenerys asked. "What do you see now?" Jaime was silent for a moment. "Now I see a queen who walked into my sister's hall knowing it might be a trap," he said. "Who agreed to share power when she could have tried to take it by force. Who walks among the Smallfolk instead of only looking down at them from a tower. I don't know if that makes you better. I don't know if anything can make this right. But it makes you different." Daenerys's fingers tightened on the stone. "I am not my father," she said. "I have said it 1,000 times. But men still look at me and see his shadow. Dragons, Wildfire, madness. If I burn this city to save the world, they'll say he was right about me all along. And if you let it burn because you're afraid of looking like him," Jaime said, "they'll still curse your name. Daenerys the weak, they'll say. Daenerys the fool." He shrugged one shoulder. "They'll say something either way," he finished. People always do. Drogon swept low over the outer districts, his roar rolling up to them. For a moment, the balcony shook faintly under their feet. I don't care what they call me, Daenerys said. I care whether there is anyone left alive to call me anything at all. Jaime glanced at her, something like respect, unexpected, wary, passing through his gaze. Then we have that in common, he said. They stood in silence for a time, watching the city breathe under the stars. Two people who had both killed kings for reasons the world would never fully understand. The air in the cellar was damp and cool, heavy with the smell of earth and old stone. It was a smell Varys found oddly comforting. Secrets thrived in such places. He sat on an overturned crate, hands folded in his lap, as several sets of eyes watched him with the wary hunger of stray cats. The children had grown since he'd last seen some of them. A boy who'd once barely reached his waist now stood almost shoulder-high, eyes as sharp as ever. A little girl he'd rescued from a brothel had lost some of the hollow look in her cheeks. They were his birds, the only flock he'd ever truly cared about. You'll be careful, he said, voice soft but firm. There are more swords on the streets now, and not all of them answer to the same mistress. When lions and dragons share a den, the mice must learn to move even more quietly. A teenage girl with dark hair tied back under a rag nodded. The gold cloaks talk as they walk with the eunuchs, she said. They don't like each other. One said he'd rather share a blanket with a flea than a foreigner. Little do they know how similar they are, Varys murmured. Men with weapons and orders they do not fully understand. It matters less what colors they wear than whose whispers reach their ears. He handed her a small pouch, clinked faintly. Distribute this carefully, he said. Coin where needed. Bread where coin can do no good because there is nothing left to buy. The queen from across the sea wants to be seen as a savior. Let us give her a chance to play the part. The girl hesitated. Which queen? She asked. Fair question, Varys thought. A year ago it would have been laughable. Both, if we can manage it, he said. Though one will accept the role more easily than the other. The boy, Tomas, shifted his weight. You trust them? He asked. The queens. I trust that they want to live, Varys replied, and that they want to win. That is often enough to work with. He rose, moving to a rough map of the city pinned to the wall. Lines had been drawn in charcoal to mark patrol routes, choke points, hidden passages. Tiny symbols marked the locations of safe houses, kitchens sympathetic to their cause, and pits best avoided. The dead move south, he said. When they come, panic will move faster. I need to know which lords are quietly buying passage on ships, which merchants are hoarding food, which priests are preaching that this is the gods' punishment and we should all lie down in the streets to die. A few of the children giggled nervously at that last, then sobered when they saw he was serious. You want us to listen, Tomas said. I always want you to listen, Varys said. But now I want you to listen for something else as well. Hope. The word sounded strange in the cellar. If you hear people speak of Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow and feel the tightness in their voices loosen, I want to know. If you hear them spit their names like curses, I want to know that too. If they talk of Cersei Lannister with anything other than fear or hatred, that will be news indeed. Why? The little girl asked. What does it matter what they say? They can't change anything. They can, Varys said gently. More than they realize. A city is not walls and streets. It is the people who fill them. If they believe this alliance will save them, they might stand a little longer when the dead come. If they believe it will only bring more fire and blood, they might open gates better left closed. He thought of all the rulers he had served. Mad, vain, cruel, weak. A few who had tried to be kind and been broken for their trouble. It matters how a story is told, Varys said. And who tells it? We are in the midst of a new one now. I would prefer it not end with everyone burned or frozen. He dismissed them with a wave, watching as they slipped back into the tunnels like smoke. When the cellar was quiet again, he allowed himself a moment to rest his head against the damp wall. 2 queens, he murmured. 1 king in the north. A city that has learned to survive anything. Let us see if that remains true. The dragon table had been hauled from Dragonstone at great effort, its bulk almost too much for the ships that carried it. Now it sat in a chamber of the Red Keep, its carved surface incongruous amid Lannister reds and golds. Stone dragons coiled along its edges, their eyes catching the torchlight. Jon Snow stood near the northern edge of the map, fingers resting lightly on the carved representation of Winterfell. Someone, perhaps Varys, perhaps Tyrion, had placed small blue stones along a line that crept steadily southward from the wall. The last hearth has fallen, Jon said. Ravens confirm it. What Bran Stark saw was no vision of some far future. It's happening now. The Umbers are gone. The dead are between the wall and us. Daenerys' hand hovered over the carved neck, where the north narrowed into the rest of Westeros. How long until they reach Winterfell? She asked. Days, Jon said. Maybe weeks if the weather slows them. They don't tire. They don't rest. They move like a storm. Cersei studied the blue stones with an expression that was almost skeptical, almost appalled. And you are certain these are things, she said. Not men with a talent for theatrics? Jon's eyes met hers, dark and steady. I am certain, he said. I've killed them. I've watched them rise. If you'd seen what I have, you wouldn't ask. Cersei's mouth tightened. Very well, she said. Let us pretend I do not think half this is madness.
What do you propose?
We send men north, Daenerys said. Quickly, as many as we can. They fortify Winterfell and the surrounding holds. We make our stand there, where the walls are strong and the people know the land. And leave King's Landing exposed? Qyburn asked mildly. If all our strength is drawn north and something unfortunate occurs there, the capital will be left with little more than walls and hopes. Jaime gave him a hard look. If the dead break Winterfell, he said, your walls and hopes won't matter. They'll reach this city soon after. And if they do, there will be nowhere left to run. Cersei's gaze flicked between the 2 men, between the dragons carved on the table and the blue stones creeping south. How many can you spare from the north? She asked Jon. Not enough, he said. We were never enough. We're fewer now. The Night King has already taken many of our best. We need every man we can get from the south. Tyrion pointed to the Riverlands, the Vale, the Stormlands. Riverrun can send some, he said. The Blackfish is dead, but there are still men loyal to House Tully's memory. The Lord's Declarant in the Vale might be persuaded to send more than a few token knights, if Lord Robin can be guided. By whom? Cersei asked sharply. You. By those he still considers friends, Tyrion said. Sansa Stark, for one. She has more influence there than any of us. Daenerys nodded slowly. The Reach? She asked. What remains of it, after the fires and the betrayals? Some houses still hold land and men, Varys said, though they may be unwilling to march north for a crown they no longer trust. They will need assurances. And what assurance can we offer? Cersei asked. That if they die in the snow, we will speak kindly of them at their funerals? That if they do not, there will be no harvests for them to worry over, Jon said. No lands to inherit, only empty halls and dead fields. It was a grim persuasion, but a true one. The conversation spun on, circling logistics. How many ships, how much food, how long it would take to move men through a land already scoured by war. Every plan ran into the same wall, time. We don't have enough of it, Daenerys said. Not for this and for your city's safety. Cersei's eyes narrowed. My city's safety is not negotiable, she said. If you strip it bare to fight in the snow, we may win that battle only to lose King's Landing to chaos. Starving people riot. Desperate lords mutiny. I will not hand this place to the fires while you fight the frost. Jon looked at the table, at the southern reaches of the map, Dorne, already scorched by its own losses. The islands, the Reach. We won't have enough for everything, he said. We have to decide what we can lose and what we can't. Silence fell, heavy as a falling axe. Daenerys looked from the carved north to the carved city under her fingers. "I will not sacrifice the north," she said. "If Winterfell falls, the dead gain a home behind these walls of snow and stone. We must hold it. And I will not sacrifice King's Landing," Cersei said. "We hold it as well." "So we hold both," Jon said, surprising them. They looked at him. "We send as many as we can to Winterfell," he said. "Enough to make a real stand. But we also prepare this city. Not just with walls and swords, but with plans to bring more people inside if the north falls. We stock food. We make escape routes. We plan for the worst while we fight for the best." "That sounds like trying to ride 2 horses with 1 arse," Bronn muttered. "But I've seen crazier things work. Once." Tyrion traced a line between Winterfell and King's Landing with his finger. "If we can slow the dead," he said, thinking aloud, "harry them with smaller forces by time, then perhaps. If we turn every river crossing into a choke point, burn bridges behind us, force them into narrow paths." "You can't burn every bridge," Jaime said. "People still have to cross them. Refugees, messengers, supplies." "We can burn enough to hurt," Tyrion replied. "And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the dead don't complain about inconvenience." Cersei exhaled slowly. "Very well," she said. "We split our efforts. Men north, preparations here. But know this, both of you." She looked at Daenerys, at Jon. "If this city begins to fracture, if the people turn, I will pull my men back. I will not let King's Landing fall to riot while you are among busy dying heroically in the snow. Then we'd better make sure that doesn't happen," Daenerys said. The main gate of King's Landing had seen many banners. Once, only the 7-pointed star had hung there, when the faith was stronger than kings. Later, the stag of Baratheon had flown, antlers spread wide over the city that had never truly belonged to it. The lion had claimed it next, golden head thrown back in silent roar. Now 2 symbols moved in the wind. The lion's banner snapped and curled, its gold catching the torchlight. Beside it, the black field of House Targaryen looked almost like a hole torn in the night, the red 3-headed dragon writhing as if trying to burst free. Below, torches burned on either side of the gate, their flames flickering in gusts of cold air. A handful of guards stood watch. 3 gold cloaks, armor dull with years of use, and 3 unsullied, spears held with the same unyielding precision as always. They did not speak much. There was little to say that had not already been muttered in barracks and taverns. One of the gold cloaks, a man with a scar across his nose, glanced up at the double banners and shook his head. "Never thought I'd live to see that," he said. "Lion sharing the wind with a dragon. What's next? Wolves at the gate waving hello?" The unsullied beside him did not react, eyes fixed straight ahead. "Do you speak common?" the gold cloak asked after a moment. "Or do you just prefer not to waste words on the likes of me?" "I speak," the unsullied said at last, his accent thick but understandable. "I do not waste words." The gold cloak huffed a laugh. "Fair enough," he said. "What do you think of all this, then? 2 queens, dead men in the snow, dragons overhead. I joined the watch to keep cut purses off the streets, not to stand between the living and stories from a wet nurse." The unsullied's gaze flicked to him. "In Astapor," he said, "we were told stories of the mother of dragons. Some said she was a god come to free us. Others said she would die and we would die with her. We did not listen. We waited. And?" the gold cloak prompted. "And she came," the unsullied said simply. "We saw men burn. We saw chains break. Stories became real. Now I stand here, with you, waiting to see which story is real this time." A small silence fell between them. Above, a shadow swept across the gate. Drogon's shape passed over the banners, briefly blotting out the lion and the dragon alike. His roar rolled down from the sky, muffled by distance but still enough to make the torches dance. For a moment, the gold cloak thought he saw something pale drifting in the torchlight. He squinted, reaching out a hand. A flake landed on his glove and melted almost at once, leaving a tiny wet mark. "Snow," he said. In King's Landing, the word still felt like a stranger. Gods. Another flake. Another. A few ash motes from some distant hearth. The air did not yet truly bite, but it held a new edge. The Unsullied watched the white specks fall and vanish. "In the north," he said, "they say winter is coming. In the cities where I was born, they say war is coming. I think they are the same thing now." The gold cloak looked up at the two banners, at the distant shapes of dragons circling, at the faint dusting of white beginning to cling to the stone. "Reckon you're right," he said quietly. "Reckon we'll see soon enough which queen keeps her word, or if any of them do." Inside the walls, in chambers of stone and shadow, Daenerys Targaryen and Cersei Lannister turned over maps and grudges, plans and fears. Jon Snow sharpened his sword and his resolve, readying himself to ride north again. Tyrion Lannister drank a little more than he should and thought a little more than was good for any man. The city settled into uneasy sleep beneath the double banners, cradled between lions' teeth and dragons' claws. Above, snow and ash mingled as they fell, indistinguishable once they touched the ground.